Hi everyone, welcome to this month's edition of Magenta Academy Online. So today what we thought we'd run through is a little bit around the topics for a little bit of extra things that you can do with direct editing. But before we get on to the agenda of today's video, I'll introduce myself. Again, for those of you that don't know me or haven't seen any of these videos before, my name is Joseph Hall. I am an Autodesk technical consultant at Magenta Solutions. Prior to this, I used to work as a PTC technical consultant. Worked with lots of companies implementing CAD within their business, helping them sort of work to best practices, get the most out of the CAD software, and so on and so forth. So, today's agenda for what we're actually going to run through is a really quick overview, first of all, of Inventor's direct editing functionality. Hopefully most of us will know that we can utilize direct editing for lots of different things. Today we're going to show you something slightly different, something that many people don't always clock onto straight away when they first start using direct editing within the system. So we'll do a quick overview of what it is first of all, what it is, what it does, how you can use it. We'll then have a quick look, because it's all relevant with today's title, at the import menu options. So new import in 2016, you get a new set of options, or a new organisation set of options. They're the same options, just sort of tidied up slightly. And then we're going to have a look at how we can use direct editing to add some intelligence to what we would call dumb geometry. So something you've imported in, maybe you've been on sort of GrabCAD or a website like that where you've just got hold of a model, or someone sent you a model from a different CAD system. And traditionally, you import that into Inventor, and whatever changes you need to make, obviously now you would use direct editing to make those changes. But that geometry doesn't have any intelligence. It doesn't come across with any of the parametric history that it may have had in the CAD system it was made in. So we're going to run through how we can utilize direct editing to really add that technology in. So this whole session really is about making the most of your imported CAD, your imported geometry. So ways in which you can make the most of it. So we'll start off looking at direct editing. Really quick overview. I don't want to spend too much time on this. We've got quite a bit to sort of throw into today's session. So for those of you that don't know what direct editing is or what it does, it sits on the ribbon. I'll show you where it sits in just a moment. And it enables you to manipulate geometry. So it's a geometry manipulation tool for native Inventor files, so something that's got parametric history, that's completely designed within the system, and you need to make a quick change, like push a surface in or move a surface by 2 or 3 mil. You haven't got time to find out where the feature sits in the long history model tree, so you can just select the face and say, well, move that face in by 2 millimeters, and it will move the face in, and any adjoining geometry that needs to be adapted, it will also move with it as well. You can also use it to manipulate imported geometry. So because it's a geometry manipulation tool, it's primarily focused around manipulating geometry. So, soft as that sounds. So the idea being that you can bring something in that's not CAD, that's not Inventor, sorry. Bring it in, it'll just be a lump of stuff, and then you can start using the direct editing tools to push it around. So maybe change the size of holes, or move a face about, or change a fillet size, or the simple things that in the past you probably would have basically just drawn out again. Simple things like changing the size of a hole. In the past, if you imported a model and the hole was the wrong size, it was a simple problem, but it was quite difficult to, well, it's a pain to have to recreate the hole. You end up recreating most of the geometry, and in the end you'll probably end up questioning, if you're doing that, whether or not it was quicker to just make the model again in your own CAD system. So hopefully tools like direct editing should alleviate that and sort of stop that from happening. Everything you do in direct editing is recorded as parameters, and this is how we can start using the intelligence of Inventor to start linking things together. So direct editing lets you move, rotate, size, delete, and scale. Okay, the difference between size and scale. Size is traditionally on curved edges or holes, so you can resize a hole, for example, or resize a fillet. Scale is scaling the whole model up and down. So 2016, so the introduction of scale. And notice it's not on this image, but I'm going to show it you in a second anyway. So 2016 saw the introduction of the scale tool, so you can scale uniformly or non-uniform using direct editing, as opposed to the old method of deriving an assembly out or deriving something out with a scale value just to get something larger or smaller. So we nip into the software. This is actually, I wanted to show you this first and foremost on an Inventor part, because what we're going to do, we're going to spend most of our time working on geometry that's not native Inventor. So the direct editing tool in 2016 sits just about here in the model browser, so you can see that's where it sits. It gives you a little image. When you click on it, there isn't a formal sort of menu for it, if you like. So I know with some of the other tools like extrusion, for example, if I had a 2D sketch, it give me a separate menu dialog box as well as the little floating menus that we get, but direct editing just has the floating menus. You can use it simply to sort of hover over faces. You can see as I hover over things, it's looking for points to snap to. So it's looking at the geometry and breaking it down, a little bit like the joints command does in an assembly. And I can select faces, and then I can start pulling things around and manipulating them. So I can pull that face out by 0.3 inches in this case, and that gives me that result for what I need it for. Okay, so nice and straightforward from that perspective. We've also got the ability here to kind of resize things. So I could say, well, I want to resize that hole that goes all the way through the middle here, and the traditional resize sits with an offset command. We actually would like to utilize a diameter, so I know just by changing that that is a diameter of 0.35, so I say I want it to be 0.25 for example, and it will then change that geometry for me and manipulate it. So there's lots of things we can do with this. I can use the new scale command and say, well, this whole model needs to be twice the size it is now, and I can scale the whole thing up twice the size in one go in the same tool. Everything you do with direct editing is always recorded, so you can see we've got our little direct edit that we've got at the bottom of the tree here. If I drag the end of the part before it, it just undoes whatever it was that I did before that. And you can have multiple direct edits. So if I go in here and I start editing the feature, you can see that when I edit the feature, it then expands to show me I've got move 1, size 1 and scale 1. So if I wanted to go back in and edit scale 1, I can right click on it and edit the operation. That will then take me back to the point where I was making that change and say, well, actually that should have been 0.285 inches in diameter in this case. So you can manipulate geometry that way. It's also quite good for deleting things, so if you want to go to direct editing and you don't want a particular face, you could say, well, that doesn't need to be there, I can delete it, and Inventor understands that and will sort of just hide the geometry away, fill everything in. You can also use it, it's quite good for those of us interested in sort of simplification of models, maybe for the purposes of BIM, to get something out into a sort of a more simple format. I'm not going to start that, but I could do it just on both sides. It allows us to use these tools to simplify models down, so I can sort of say, well, yeah, delete those fillets that are attached to that model. And for more complicated things, obviously, as you'd expect, it takes a little bit more time, but you can see it has removed the fillet on both sides of that geometry. I could have gone to 10 and started filleting the whole thing if I wanted to. Obviously we've got time restraints on these videos, so I wanted to make sure that you guys get the most out of them. So that's direct editing in essence. That's sort of what it is and what you can use it for. Obviously this is on an Inventor part. What I'm now going to have a quick look at is the new import menu, because obviously that's relevant, because we're going to import something that's not Inventor and then start adding intelligence to it. So I'll get rid of this, and then we're going to have a quick look at what we're going to do for the next part of this. So we'll just nip on the home screen again so we can see what's going on. So back in here then, direct editing. Second part we're going to look at is the import menu options. So 2016 again, any CAD functionality introduced within Inventor 2016 has given us the ability to select, to be selective upon import. So we can actually choose what we want to bring in. Now this seems like a really sort of not all that impressive function, if you like, but on the face of it, what it's giving you the option to do is I can import an assembly now and choose what I would like to bring in from that assembly, whereas in the past I'd have to bring in the whole assembly whether I wanted it or not, and I would then have to sit there and filter through all the information that I got, deleting things, removing things. So this should be a real time saver for those of us that are importing something directly into Inventor. So upon import you can select from the model tree structure, be selective about what parts and sub-assemblies you bring in, and as mentioned, the import dialog box has been simplified to make importing a little bit easier. So in terms of what you're going to see On the left hand side is the new import dialog box for those of us that haven't seen it before. So you can see that option at the top there to reference the model or convert the model. Now the reason those are greyed out right now is because I'm actually importing an IGES file here, so you can see there's a little IGS at the top of that dialog box. We'll talk a little bit more about referencing and converting a model in the next section, because I am actually going to work on a CATIA part. I'm going to bring in a CAT part into Inventor. Moving down the list, we've got the object filters. So these are standard object filters that we would have had previously. They're just laid out in a little bit more of a user-friendly environment, I suppose. So we can choose to bring in solids or surfaces or wires or whatever we want to bring in. Previous versions of Inventor, in order to get this menu up, the import options up, it was often the case that you had to browse to the model that you wanted to bring in, select it, and then select the options tab that then became available. And because the normal ethos of the way people would bring things in, they'd hover over something, they would double click on it, and they would completely miss out the options. So it's quite common for us to get a call on the help desk to say, I'm bringing something in, and I double click on it, and it comes in, and it's all surfaces, and it should be a solid. I've been told it should be a solid. And scenarios like that normally could have been resolved by just selecting the icon, so not double clicking on it, selecting the assembly or part that you want to bring in, clicking on options, and then choosing what you would like to bring in, whether it be solids or surfaces. So now Autodesk have kind of alleviated that from happening anymore by just making sure that anytime you double click on something, you will see this dialog box straight away. It's kind of a prerequisite now. You have to at least configure some options from this dialog box. Even if you just see it and click OK, at least you know it's there. So other options in here, you can choose the units if you want. Always advisable to try and use from source units where possible, in the ideal world. If they brought something in, if they created something for you, or someone has created something for you in millimeters, ideally try and use millimeters in Inventor. Reduced memory mode does a little bit of what I would class as computer wizardry, so it's sort of working in the background. It's things that you won't see directly on your screen, but will make a difference to you in terms of what you can do, how quickly you can move and manipulate the model. Only really with reduced memory mode would you want to use that with assemblies, I would suggest, unless you've got a really complicated part. But all of this is it's all on circumstance basis. So although we can offer advice on bits and pieces that you should use with certain environments, it's always dependent on what you're trying to bring into the system. A bit further down you've got the assembly options. So assembly options and part options. So if you're bringing in an assembly, you get to choose whether or not the assembly comes in as an assembly or whether it comes in as a single part. If it comes in as a single part, does it come in as a multi-body single part? So wherever there are, obviously in the assembly there might be 2 or 3 different components in there. If you're bringing that in as a part, because Inventor can work with multiple solids, it might give us the option to choose how we want to bring it in. Quick little option for the file names. On the second tab, so this is all of those options are available on the options tab at the top here. On the second tab you'll see the select menu. So on the select menu we can start to filter out components that we actually want to bring in and things that we don't want to bring in. So let's just nip into the software and show you a little bit of that. So I have, in my workspace, I have a little scissor list, and I've actually imported this into Inventor before, so that's actually what we're going to see. But I've got the original IGES file that I brought this in from. So obviously previous versions of Inventor, you'd select it, you'd go down here to the options tab. Obviously that's now greyed out because it doesn't hold any relevance at the moment. And then when I click open, Inventor will load through the model, and one of the first things it does is present me with this import dialog box. Okay. So no model on screen just yet. I can work my way down and configure what it is that I would like. Just a quick little reference to this bit at the top here. Hover over the little eye, and the reference model tells you what's going to happen. So that's the AnyCAD functionality kicking in. Again, you'll see that available in a moment when I do the CATIA part. Solid surfaces, wires, meshes, if these are applicable, I can choose to bring them in. These are often dependent on the CAD format that we're choosing to bring into Inventor. So because this is an IGES file, it's solids and surfaces and wires typically. What units I would like to use, I'm obviously going to leave them as from source at the moment, and the surfaces I can choose, bring them in as individual surfaces, stitch them together, or create a composite of those surfaces, so where it's possible try and create solids. And I'm going to go to the Select tab, and on the Select tab I'm going to click Load the Model. Now this is quite a unique function, because at this point now it's now going to show me a preview of what I'm actually bringing in. Before I click OK and I waste the time thinking for Inventor thinking about what I'm bringing in, I can actually choose at this point what I would like to bring in. So there's the model on screen. It's fully manipulatable, so I can, if that's a word, I can manipulate the model, so it's a model on screen. Quite a few surfaces in here, which is why it's a little bit heavy on. There you go, when it started to think about it. Doesn't help that I've got my settings set with shadows, with object and ambient shadows on, so I've turned those off. That'll help a considerable amount, as you can see. So if I'm bringing something in, link visibility is the ability that if I turn something off in the list, it will then disappear from what I see on screen. And now it's really a case of just flicking down the model and seeing whether or not we've got anything that we don't want. So there's quite a few external circlips on this model. It might be for the purposes of what I'm trying to do, I don't need them. So I can select the top one, Shift key, select the bottom one. Inventor's now thinking about all of those parts. Can you see that it's now highlighted them on screen? It might be that they are essential for the modelling integrity of what I'm bringing in, but for the purposes that I might want to bring this model in, it's not all that relevant for me. I don't need it specifically. So with all of them selected, I can just say, well, I don't need those, turn them off. And then I can carry on working my way down the model. So there's a few more sort of multiple sets. I don't really know what part 2 is. There's lots of them. There's a few part 2s and part 3s that exist in the list. I'm not entirely sure what they are. The nuts above it, I'm assuming we're going to be holding things together, so I'm going to try and maintain those if I can. But if I scroll quite the way down, you can see there's a hell of a lot of these part 4s. So again, Shift key, top and bottom. Inventor will now select all of them for me. And you can see even with something like this, there's a fair few parts to this that I can choose to bring in. So I'm just sort of filtering out the information that I do and do not want. All the wheel bulbs that sit along the bottom. Top and bottom select. Select all of those. Again, obviously for the integrity of the model they're vital, but for what I need them for, what I need this model in my system for, it might not be that relevant. So I can click OK, and it will now import that geometry fairly quickly, to be fair, based upon the information that I've just given it. So I've told it that I don't want certain pieces, I don't want certain bits and pieces. So you can see its IGES model comes in as a set of surfaces, but even though there's quite a few bits to this, it's still greatly reduced the amount of components that I would have received had it been that I just sort of said, yeah, bring the line. There was quite a few components that I actually was able to exclude from the model. Typically people will use that to either exclude things or include things, something specific that they want to use and bring into the system. Okay, we'll get rid of that, not using that anymore for the next bit. So that's kind of a quick highlight overview of the import options, different things we can do when we're importing things with the Select tab. Choose what you want to bring in, what you don't want to bring in. So really kind of making, again, along the lines of making the most of the imported CAD geometry that you've got. You might get something and it's everything, and you don't need everything into the model, so you can start to filter things down. Final chapter, sort of the main honus of what we're going to look at today, the main sort of focus of what we're looking at, is the ability to add intelligence to done geometry. So you've got some geometry there, it's been brought in, its model integrity has gone out the window in effect when it's been imported or exported from an alternative system, and then you need to now work with it. It might be that it's the wrong size, it might be that it's all correct and it's all the right sizes, but because it's now in your CAD system, you want to be able to manipulate it. You want it to be parametric. We're so used to having things that are completely parametric that we can just pick and push and, you know, go into a feature and change a diameter or a size or a dimension and have things update, that it'd be nice if we could do that with imported geometry. So direct editing actually provides us with the function to do that. So we're going to add some parameters. So every time you use direct editing, as I mentioned, it will add a parameter to the system. Those parameters can be used just like normal parameters in Inventor. So you can use them to resize things, rename things. You can link them together. You can create equations from them if you really wanted to. So this is kind of taking what we can do with direct editing and saying, yeah, it's good for push and pull, but you can also take it to the next level and actually utilize it to manipulate things, utilize it to drive the model if you wanted to. Little top tip at the bottom of there, always rename them. So by default, and you'll see in a moment, Inventor will give them the D values, so D0, 1, 2, 3 and 4 and X and so on and so forth. Always a good idea to rename them so they actually make a little bit of sense when you're trying to view them in the system. So let's go and open up a part. We'll go back to my workspace, and in my miscellaneous parts I've got a CATIA part, okay, cover cat part. I can open that up into the system. Now notice, because I'm bringing in something from a different CAD system rather than a neutral CAD format, I get the option at the top of the screen to reference or convert the model. Now for what I'm going to show you with direct editing, it's a way round referencing the model. So obviously any CAD lets me link that CATIA model back to its native system. So if someone sends me the new model in the new format, a few changes made to it, that'll then be imported into Inventor. When I open the model in Inventor, it'll say, oh, there's an update that's happened to this model, and I can update it. Because of what I'm showing you now, I'm actually just going to leave it as converted, and I'm going to click OK and bring it in. So this is what we get when we get the model in place. Simple little things like if the hole on the back of this is the wrong size, normally we'd be creating a brand new sketch on here, drawing a circle at the center point of it, and then re-extruding it. Obviously we can use direct editing to now just say, well, I want to resize that. Rather than just do the offset, I want to specify a diameter for it. But this is the point at which I'm going to change it. Now that 44.450 millimeters might be exactly the value I want. I'm just going to click at the start of it and sort of start typing something in to say back hole size equals, spell hole correctly, that might help, 44. Okay. Now what that's actually done is in my parameters I've now got one that says black or back hole size, if I change the name again, is equal to 44.5. If I change that, I should move the model out here, if I change that to 55, that's a parameter now that's driving my model. So it's imported, it's a parameter that I'm using to drive my model. And we can continue to do things like that. So I've got here I can say I want to move, and these tend to be a little bit more tricky because I want to move those two faces, and obviously to keep the modelling integrity of this I'm going to want to move these faces as well because I want the holes to go with it. If again, it's all about design intent. If my design intent is my holes are going to maintain their position, I could start dragging this out to its new position, or I could start saying, well actually I'll measure this from that rear end, and actually the overall length of this now, so overall length is going to equal, I don't know, 165. Let's go 170. The overall length of that model is now 170. So again, it's actually taken everything with it as I'd want it to. If I go into here, I've got an overall length of this that is coming out now at 170. If I change that to 200, my model increases to 200. If it goes back down to 100, the model goes back down to 100. So I've got full control over what's going on. 150. So we've got full control of that. I can start to use direct editing to say, well, the holes are going to be a different size as well. So I might say again, size, choose diameter. The diameter of that hole is going to be 10 mil, and I'm going to put a little point in front of it and say, well, this is going to be hole size. I can't spell hole today because it seems hole size equal to 10 mil. Lovely. So then I can then go and place this on all the others. Now I don't need to specify with these. I could just say equals hole size. Because it should know what hole size is, I'll actually press equals hole size. Because it knows what hole size is, it knows that that's now 10 millimeters. So I'm linking them together. There isn't an option, unfortunately, just of yet to say show me parameters within this box. Oh, there there is. Sorry, list of parameters, hole size. I was thinking of a different command then. Add that in. You can do the same thing here. Size, diameter, pick in a box. Oh, size, diameter, pick in the box. Hole size, list them together. Okay. So now what I've got, back to here, is I've got D5, which is hole size. I've got hole size at the top. D5 is hole size. D6 should be hole size, and if they're not, you can just sort of copy them, paste them in, link them all together. So now again, I just move so you can see all the holes I could say actually hole size should be 7.5mm. When I press enter, it changes all of the holes that I have in the model. So I've got that sort of configuration again. We could do something similar again. Let's direct edit and do the diameter of the counter bore. So that might be 15. So I might have counter sunk, sorry, so counter sunk equals 15mm. We could do the same thing. Diameter, pick in the box. It's like actually list the parameters. This one's the counter sink. Add that in. Do the same thing over here. So we might want to go diameter of that one in the box. List the parameters. Counter sink. Enter. Diameter of that one. List the parameters. Counter sink. Go. So now what I should get is that let's start taking the values, we can just add them back in. They're all looped together. So I can utilise the standard parameter functionality to kind of say, well, that should be 25. When I add that as 25, it makes all of them 25. So I'm creating a model here that's completely configurable. It was imported geometry, it was just standard CAD, standard CATIA model. There wasn't any history to this, so you can see if I go back before I do any of my direct edits, all this is an imported lump of something. It's a solid lump of stuff. There's no intelligence there. What I've now done, utilising direct editing, is put some of that intelligence in there. And we can go a step further with this. What's quite nice, standard sort of functionality, you can do all sorts here. I could sort of reduce the thickness of these surfaces if I wanted to by sort of removing them. I could start deleting faces out if I needed to do that. But we can sort of make them look quite nice, put a little iLogic form in there. Just make sure that all these parameters that I want to be able to use are exported, so overall length, hole size and counter sunk. And then I can make myself a little form, hole size, overall length, back hole size and counter sink. So I could maybe jig these around a little bit, overall length at the top. I might say that my overall length, because I want to control it, is controlled by a little slider. So I can say, well, the overall length, the minimum that can be is 100, the maximum that it's allowed to be is maybe 350, and it goes up in steps of 10 or 20. It'll go up in steps of 10. And I could do the same thing on some of the others if I wanted to set some limits. But what I now have is this was imported geometry. There was no intelligence in this whatsoever, and I've got to a point now where I actually have a form that is completely controlling this geometry. So I can go right down to 100mm, right out to 350mm as the length of it. I could change the back hole size to maybe something like 80, so that then gives me more of a cutout in the back of this. I could change my hole sizes, so I could say, well, all the holes in this model need to be 12.5mm, so I could change one of them to 12.5mm. 12.5, you can see that's changing all of them. And then the counter sunk, I might write that a bit smaller, make it 20, and that's shrinking them all down. So I've gone from importing something that was dumb geometry, no intelligence to it whatsoever, to having something that I can, everyone likes forms, within iLogic it always looks a bit sexy, but I've got something there that I can manually configure around and show someone and say, right, well, this is a model that I brought in, didn't have any intelligence, but it's got some intelligence now. I'm making the most of my imported CAD geometry, to quote the phrase that we were looking at, and the whole theme around what we're looking at today. You could do one more if you want with the radius of a fillet, so I could do another one, say fillet is equal to that, drop around the other side and just say the radius is whatever that is, into the parameters and say fillet controls that one. So now again, I could add that to my list if I wanted to, but just to show you quickly, if I change the fillet to 5mm, it adds a 5mm fillet on both sides. Nice and straightforward. And the other thing to do with that is if I were to put a fillet on the inside of these two models, I could now actually say, well, list me the parameters, that's the same size as fillet. So now I've added a whole new level of intelligence to this, whereby, actually this was direct editing. Now the fillet parameter here, I could change that to say 3mm. It's not only changing my direct editing geometry, but it's also changing my model geometry. So if that goes back up to say 10, you can see that's going to have an impact on what we get on the screen. So really maximising the use of direct editing. Everyone looks at it and goes, yeah, it's only good for push and pull stuff. It's not. There's lots more to it that we can use. So really quick summary then. Quick look at direct editing, gave you an overview of that. The import menu and the options, the configuration with those. We looked at adding the intelligence to done geometry, and finished it off by just popping it in a quick form and just showing you how dynamic that can be from a static model that you've just imported. So we configured the whole process, configuring the information in the end as well. As normal, any questions, please let us know. Drop us an email, autodesk.helpdesk@magentasolutions.com. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you all again soon.